Yo, did the world's largest country and BRICS nations just officially ditch the US dollar to adopt a new currency? Well, another bombshell against the dollar has been dropped at the BRICS summit yesterday, and rumors are circulating that maybe, just maybe, the BRICS are about to create a new currency. We've been hearing these rumors. We even got a visual of this, but dare we speculate and say that we might see the BRICS nations formally adopt Bitcoin? We don't know yet, but before you call us crazy or call me crazy, and before we play you this video of Putin yesterday at the BRICS summits denouncing the dollar, let's not forget that BRICS countries are all almost entirely interested in Bitcoin. We have old BRICS countries like China. Of course, the Hong Kong ETF has been approved. Hash power is coming back online in China. Russia's legalizing Bitcoin mining. India's pivoting on its Bitcoin stance. Brazil's new bank is the largest digital asset bank in the world right now. And Saylor met with a central bank coming out of Brazil in 2023. And of course, we have South Africa, home to Bitcoin and Kazi. So there is a lot of interest in regards to Bitcoin in BRICS nations, but does that mean they're going to adopt Bitcoin yet? No, but we're going to break this down for you guys because they're talking about a new international payment system. Obviously, there's been a lot of concerns about Russia and getting kicked off SWIFT and all that good stuff. And we have even more interesting stories, which I'll play for you from BRICS countries after this video. So let's play you this video that we got yesterday from the BRICS summit about Putin talking about the US dollar, which is something we always talk about here, and the nefarious nature of the US dollar payment system.
Very much, Madam Rousseff. You said that the dollar was used as a weapon. It is true, and we see that. I think it is a great mistake by those who do it, since the use of the dollar, which is still the most important tool in global finance, and its use as a political tool undermines trust in this currency, thereby reducing its capabilities. We are not the ones who do that, it's others. We are not rejecting the dollar or fighting against it, but if they don't let us work with it, what else should we do? We should seek other alternatives, and this is exactly what we do. We aspire to cooperation, but still we should understand that the longer we live and work under someone else's rules and on someone else's platforms, the longer the transition will take to build a new, fair economic financial system, and the more turbulence we will experience, including those that we now witness in the Middle East. We'll talk to our colleagues about this later. Thank you very much for your work.
So anyone that hasn't been sleeping under a rock has probably gotten to the point that we talk about here constantly about what has happened with the US dollar and it being weaponized against our enemies. You can argue that's good or bad. It's just that's the facts of the matter. And this is why, as a Bitcoin channel, we are always talking about the importance of having a non-sovereign money, something that no one can control. It's an equal playing field for everyone. And again, like I was saying, you know, the new BRICS members are taking some pretty good Bitcoin stances as well. Ethiopia, their government's been mining Bitcoin. Iran's been mining Bitcoin for years. Turkey, Erdogan, forgive me, has been meeting with Bukele in 2023. And of course, they have rampant inflation. So as Russia's been slowly kicked off the dollar, kicked off Swiss, assets have been frozen. It looks like they don't care anymore and are making calls for a new international payment system. Again, I do have some pictures here, and I'm not alone. I got my boy Dante Cook, aka the host of Bitcoin Simply, one of our new content creators. So Dante, good to have you here. Let me just break down a couple more of these headlines, and then we will get into this, and you and I will go back and forth. So this article came out from The Guardian, obviously kind of painting this as a bad thing. Again, they are an American media publication, so there is some concerns here, and even some concerns coming from the BRICS nations themselves. But the headline here, Putin calls for an alternative international payment system at BRICS summit. Russian president's goal to de-dollarize world economy alarms member that do not want bloc to turn against West. Moving down a little bit, Russia is working on creating a settlement and payment infrastructure that would bypass the SWIFT payment system based in Belgium. The de-dollarization initiative is probably the most concrete proposal likely to emerge from the summit that has been remarkable for giving Putin his biggest international platform since, of course, February 2022. You guys know why. And this last quote here, before I show you this picture of a potential, symbolic gesture of announcing a new currency coming out from the BRICS nation. We have Agatha Demarius, a sanctions specialist at the European Council of Foreign Relations, said, at this stage, it is hard to imagine a widespread development and adoption of BRICS financial tools globally. The U.S. dollar's domination of the global currency landscape is entrenched both for trade transactions and foreign exchange reserves. More than 80% of global trade transactions are invoiced in U.S. dollars, which also accounts for nearly 60% of central bank reserve. And so, again, look, we got this picture here coming out, and there's some pictures of their currency. It looks kind of like they're making a new euro, but of course this would be the BRICS dollar or whatever they're going to name it. It's not official yet. They haven't officially announced a new currency, but they are talking about it, and there's a symbolic gesture of holding a new BRICS currency, a new BRICS dollar note, which is very interesting to see. And so, of course, as a Bitcoin channel, we know all the problems that go along with the SWIFT system, that go along with the US dollar. We have been weaponizing the dollar, but I think the biggest point there is to further spread that the US is shooting themselves in the foot. Look, I'm an American. I obviously want to see America continue to prosper, but we're seeing that the politicians in Washington have used the US dollar and weaponized it against our enemies, because if you really break down the economics of this, the dollar is our biggest export in the US, and now countries are looking for alternatives. We're seeing bonds being dropped. No one wants U.S. government debt. And this is kind of one of those tit for tat things that we've pushed the world to such an extent that now everyone doesn't want to use our dollar. They're at least questioning the use of the dollar. And of course, I would argue, and I think Dante would argue as well, and everyone here at Simply Bitcoin would argue, that I fundamentally think it would be a mistake for Russia to create its own currency. You saw that last quote there, that most countries aren't really going to want to join the BRICS payment system. But there is roughly about 41 nations that are looking to join the BRICS coalition. And that is a growing trend that we're seeing. People don't want US debt. People are looking at the weaponization of the dollar, and they're looking for alternatives. And obviously here at Bitcoin, we would argue that the best alternative, the best international payment system, or rather the best international money period, is Bitcoin. So it's going to be interesting to see these conversations evolve. Of course, you can say that, oh, we're being like Russian shills here because we're just covering the news and showing that, hey, Russia wants to drop the dollar. BRICS nations want to drop the dollar because it's been weaponized against them. And Bitcoin is that neutral money. And so once all those countries get into Bitcoin, they realize that Bitcoin is the true neutral international money. I think the game is really going to change. And that's when adoption, we might even hit hyper Bitcoinization at that point. It's when one of these big nations fully embrace Bitcoin, fully adopt Bitcoin. And if we get all the countries that are in BRICS interested in joining BRICS, that's a total of 50 countries dropping the dollar, going into the Bitcoin system. And that is really when the game theory gets super crazy. Anyways, Dante, I know you've been covering this lately. I know you got your eye on the ball right here. So what's your thoughts on this clip coming out from Putin? What's your thoughts about BRICS nations dropping the dollar?
Man, couple thoughts. Before we get into any of the logistics of the macro backdrop, I want to get into some cultural commentary, because even the translators that are translating for Putin don't know how to have fun. Like, it's crazy. Like, at least our dictators or our evil people, like a Bill Clinton, or, even like you can take Kamala, for example, like she has a little cackling laugh that'll make you like kind of question whether she's a good person or not. But Putin's face is just like stone faced. The translator behind him, stone faced. You know why I really think they're serious about the BRICS this time? Because I have 4 kids, and taking family pictures with 6 of us is hard as hell. So when they try to get 35 of them in one picture, like, you had to know the camera person was pissed off. Like, they got 13 different translators speaking to 35 different people, and the picture looked crazy. I know that was hard, trying to get short people in the front. Putin's like 5'5", trying to get Chi in there. It's just a whole mix of stuff going on in there. that's the cultural commentary. So I know that they're really going to try to make it work, because doing a picture with 35 people and trying to get a good shot, we got to maximize. All right. The most important thing about BRICS, like, we in the United States, we have this slanted view that we are the most important people in the world. Top 10 BRICS countries represent 45% of the world's population, 36% of the world's GDP, $29 trillion, and 29% of the world's Earth's surface, and 44% of total GDP. So look, these people are actually the larger in terms of population and even growth. There's this great image that's coming out of the top G7 nations. None of the G7 nations are growing above 3% in GDP, and the BRICS countries that are represented there are growing above 3% in GDP. So some of these countries have favorable backdrops. And one of the things that made the dollar is the dollar. You go back to Bretton Woods, you go back to our pact with Saudi Arabia. Once they found these new reserves of oil, we said, hey, we will protect you. We'll protect your waterways. We'll protect you militarily with our Navy. We just ensure that all of the dollar, or all of the oil that is paid for in dollars. That's how the dollar became the global reserve currency of the world, even beyond gold. So you have to remember, the dollar is really backed by the currency of the world, which Natty Brunel said 2 days ago on Charles Payne's show, energy. And these shows and these countries have energy in abundance, right? They are some of the leading exporters in terms of oil, in terms of vegetables, in terms of some of the raw materials and goods, lithium, palladium. You saw the United States government talking about putting a tariff on the palladium, because palladium is going to be really important for this AI future and boom. And Russia actually sits on top of all of it. So it's going to be very interesting. One of the things that I think people have to realize is that the dollar is not going to be worthless. That Putin said that himself. We can't go away from the dollar. It is the most important asset in global monetary trade. 87% of transactions that happen globally are interchanged or denominated in dollars through interchange banks, through banks themselves, or through back office settlements that they do after the fact. But the most important thing to know is that the dollar will be worth less. So the dollar will not go to zero in nominal terms. The dollar will go to zero against everything that it's measured against. When people say the dollar is going to zero, I think everybody takes that the wrong way. We're not going to get a donut in the dollar. It's not a crypto asset in terms of it won't be worth anything, like 99% of those things. And shout out to ETH, because I get an opportunity to bash them whenever I can. You're down $1 trillion. Like, ETH is worth $1 trillion less than Bitcoin right now, for anybody who wants to make a stupid decision and go in on ETH right now. But the most important thing is that everything denominated in the dollar will be worth less over time. The United States is backed into a corner. They lost all trust from other global reserve currencies and treasury buyers when they seized $300 billion of Russia's assets going back 2 years, and then even threatened to fund the Ukrainian war, which is just a shadow proxy war, for the United States to fight against Russia via another country in Ukraine. That's neither here nor there. They broke the trust in the United States Treasury system, which was the world's free market return, safest safe haven asset that you can put your money into. And now they have nowhere else to go. That's why BRICS is being created. That's why they're doing what they're doing. Not because we're here to prop up these people or say that they're great people and they're doing great things. It's because we've done this to ourselves. And largely, I believe that these countries, because they are abundant in the world's universal currency, which is energy, I do believe that they are great proponents for Bitcoin as well.
Hold up. Dante coming in hot. Let's go. Absolutely killing it. And there's a few things that I want to touch on before we go on. There was a great comment in here. And I've noticed this happening in a lot of different scenarios as well. Hold on. I'm trying to find this comment. It was by skip on down the road. And he goes, BRICS members seem a lot like gold bugs, that they recognize the problem, but not the solution, AKA Bitcoin. And this is what we're seeing happening all the time. Like, you know, a lot of the people in the world right now, you can kind of liken them to like dinosaurs. They see there's a problem, but they're just redoing the same steps that they've done before instead of trying to branch out to something new. And obviously, we would argue that that new technology is Bitcoin. And this is where we are right now. The asymmetry of understanding Bitcoin hasn't fully distributed around the world. Yes, you guys are early here. We've understood Bitcoin. We understand the impact of what Bitcoin is. And there's still an uphill battle here because there's still still a lot of education that has to be done to kind of get more people to adopt Bitcoin, because that's the most important thing here, period, is getting more people to hold Bitcoin, to get more people to see the light, get more people understanding what is actually at stake and how, you know, how we're teetering on the verge of maybe a total global fiat collapse. The fiat apocalypse might be upon us, but you're seeing that the problems are being talked about, but not enough talk has been happening in regards to the solution. And that's why we're here. And this is why all you Bitcoiners out there are actually doing the work of trying to spread people, or spread the adoption of Bitcoin and get people on to the Bitcoin standard, or rather the personal Bitcoin standard. But it is absolutely amazing what you said, Dante, about like the trust has been eroded. I think trust in institutions are, I don't know, I don't have the data here, so I'm spitballing, but it seems at least just that the trust in institutions are at the lowest they've probably ever been. I don't know if that's historically accurate, but it does feel like that minimizing trust in these institutions is crumbling. And that's, I think, part of what we've been talking about. Just they've weaponized the dollar and people are looking for alternatives, and more people are going to wake up to the Bitcoin standard. Anyways, let's get into the show because we do have a lot for you guys. But before we move on, guys, like, share, subscribe. There's over 1,000 of you guys watching on YouTube and Twitter right now. Make sure you smash the like button and comment on the show. Let's see what you guys think about this. But of course, we do got to pay the bills here at Simply Bitcoin. Go to bitcoinwell.com, the best place to buy your Bitcoin. It has automatic self-custody by default, which means you literally need to have a Bitcoin wallet to get your Bitcoin. Yes, it's not as convenient for some of you guys that aren't fully Bitcoin maxis, but this means they can never rug pull you on your Bitcoin, and that is a plus. They're enabling independence. Make sure you use the promo code SimplyBTC, and you can get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin wishing well. Of course, what is the Bitcoin wishing well? You get some tosses, you throw a coin in, and you are able to win up to 1 million sats. So get your Lightning wallets out, and we're going to do one right now for you guys. Of course, scan the QR code. This will be generational wealth. Oh, let's go. Okay, 2,100 sats. All right. So whoever gets that first, get 2,100 sats. What's that like? I don't even know. I can't do the conversions right now. But anyways, make sure you go sign up to bitcoinwell.com. And I was talking with Adam yesterday. I might have some trickery up my sleeve to report on later in regards to Bitcoin Well. But on that note, guys, let's get into the numbers. Of course. Also, once you get a Bitcoin wallet, you need to back up that seed phrase. Make sure you are securing your generational wealth. Do not leave it on a piece of paper because it might get destroyed. If you were in Florida, maybe the hurricane came and got your seed phrase wet. Now you're wrecked. And your great-great-grandchildren are going to ask, hey, Grandpapa, why are we broke even though you are a Bitcoiner? And you don't want to tell them that you didn't secure your generational wealth. Make sure you stamp it into titanium. They've been trialed and tested. They've been through the ringer. It's been thrown in the water. It's been run over by bulldozers. It's been burnt by torches, and it still withstands and holds your seed phrase. You want to make sure that you are backing up your seed phrase in titanium. Stamp your seed in titanium and use the promo code for 15% off of Simply. Okay, guys, let's get into the numbers. We'll go over the numbers real quick before we cover some more news. Of course, I'm over here on Clock Moody's Bitcoin dashboard, and the current price is $67,560. So it looks like we're climbing back up. We're consolidating a little bit. Hopefully soon we'll break up past the 70K mark. I think yesterday we said 77 was the new all-time high adjusted via inflation. So, hey, we're almost there. Anyways, the stats per dollar, aka how much the dollar is worth in Bitcoin, aka how much Bitcoin you can buy for a single dollar, is currently at 1,480 sats per dollar, or 148 bits for the bits maxi in the bats. I think that conversation is going to come back soon. And the current block height, which might be the most important number in Bitcoin. Yes, we all love the price, but TikTok next block This number shows that Bitcoin is working exactly as designed. We're at block height of 867,167. The current market cap in fiat terms is $1.34 trillion. And the Bitcoin versus gold market cap, so much room to run in the hard money game. We are only at 6.96% of gold's market cap. Soon we will get to 100. Soon enough we'll get there. And the total money supply, the total issuance of all Bitcoin that will ever be created is currently at 94.15% at 19,772,180.49 BTC. All right. Well, Dante mentioned something earlier. We will get a chance to dunk on Ethereum again. I'm glad you brought that up. We are going to be talking about ETFs for a little bit. I know the ETF conversation has been kind of beaten to a pulp. I guess I say at this point metaphorically because Nico's not here, but I'm sure a lot of us Bitcoiners are tired. Obviously, here at Simply Bitcoin, we are spot Bitcoin maxis. We think you guys should be buying Bitcoin directly. You don't need to buy the paper Bitcoin, but I get it. If you are in TradFi, you got your money locked up in the TradFi instruments, then maybe you want to get some Bitcoin exposure. So do with that information as you will. But covering the ETFs again, it is undoubtedly the best ETF launch ever. Literally ever. And here we got some numbers. So this was tweeted out by Nate Garachi, president at ETF Store. And of course, he's covering the ETF. So 575 ETFs have now launched in 2024. And 14 of the top 30 by inflows are either spot Bitcoin or a shitcoin ETF that will not be named except when we dunk on it. Includes 6 of the top 10. And there are also 2 master related ETFs in the top 30. So this is probably the point that we constantly keep stressing that, and we're going to say Bitcoin appetite. Bitcoin appetite from TradFi is real. Again, we've been joking all year long. Don't sell your Bitcoin because you're selling your Bitcoin to Larry Fink or Michael Saylor. And now you're starting to see that it's catching on. We're seeing more big names come out and say that they have only Bitcoin exposure, that you need some Bitcoin exposure. I think we started the year at when the ETF came out, maybe you should have 1%. Now the conversation is you probably should have 5 to 10%. We'll soon enough get to the point where we're you need to go all in. You need to go all in on Bitcoin. Anyways, going further on this, Eric Balkunis, of course, he works at Bloomberg, right? Yep. Analyst, senior ETF analyst at Bloomberg. He goes, great stats, never ceases to amaze. I'll go one step further. In the last 4 years, 1,800 ETFs have launched, and IBIT, of course, the BlackRock ETF, is the most successful of all of them at $26 billion. And then this morning, Eric comes back on Twitter and he goes, we have this tweet here. Actually, we'll go here first and goes, Sean goes, yet another big day for BlackRock Spot Bitcoin ETF. Now almost through 400,000 BTC under management. Liquidation heat map showing strong potential upside. Get some and get yours while you still can. Of course, it's showing some of the Bitcoin holders here. And BlackRock is coming, it's going for the top spot. Can they flip in Satoshi out there? That's the real flippening that we're going to see. And going further, US spot Bitcoin ETFs, which just covered, BlackRock is basically the biggest one. It's dwarfed Grayscale, which had the head start out there, and it seems like all the money is rotating out of Grayscale and into BlackRock. So soon enough, once we start to see that more people catch on to the Bitcoin ETF, it won't just be the rotation of money from, Grayscale into BlackRock. I think we're going to see a new unlock of liquidity going into Bitcoin. All right, now going back to this tweet by Eric Balkunis, and he goes, not yet, 10 months old, and the ETFs are 97% of the way to holding 1 million Bitcoin and 87% of the way to passing Satoshi as the biggest holder. I'll be presenting on this at Lugano, and if you're going to come say hi. So it just goes to show that TradFi is loving Bitcoin. We've hit the main stage. Not only are we in the political discussion, not only are we getting, the nod from traditional financial asset managers, we have entered the main stage, and the ETF now is most likely, I think, undoubtedly the best ETF ever. And I think this is only going to increase, which just goes to show that there is a very obvious need and want for Bitcoin. And of course, that's the first step. Get Bitcoin exposure. The next step is hopefully some of these people start to actually hold Bitcoin directly. But we know how the traditional financial world works. It's very hard for them to get that TradFi capital into Bitcoin. So course, they're just here. But it just goes to show that, Wall Street has an appetite for Bitcoin. So shouts out to every single one of you guys out there. Hashtag front ran Wall Street. It's only a matter of time until Wall Street starts working for us and starts pumping our bags. So, there's a trade-off here. Yes, there's an interest in Bitcoin. Yes, numbers going to go up. But there is and should be a very real concern about how much Bitcoin goes into these ETFs, considering that, I know it's what we get called yesterday, paranoid crypto anarchists are concerned about a 6102 order. I personally think of all this ETF Bitcoin as the government's Bitcoin, but hey, I'm just a paranoid crypto anarchist over here. But it just goes to show that the interest in Bitcoin is growing. And man, it's been pretty crazy to see how quickly Wall Street and the institutional capitals of the world are adopting Bitcoin. Jump in. Okay.
I saw a stat this morning. 47% of all traditional hedge funds now hold Bitcoin, and most of that's going to be through ETFs. And it's 15 of the top 25 hedge funds in the world now own Bitcoin. And I think the thing that's most critical for people to know, a lot of people don't know, Larry Fink started out at this bank way back in the day. I think it was called First Bank or First Boston Bank. And he was one of the original creators of mortgage-backed securities. This is like 1987 or 1986. 1987, he blew up the fund. They lost, $100 million. They were getting ready to fire him. He was depressed, down on his luck. Steve Schwartzman, a couple guys from Blackstone, who actually spun out BlackRock, said that, hey, you're one of the most talented guys on Wall Street. You're 35 years old. We're going to give you a shot. They gave him a $5 million loan. The dude only took out $150,000 on that $5 million loan to start BlackRock. They went from like a couple $100 million in assets under management to like $1 billion in less than a few years. And then they got up to $1 trillion in 2000 when they went public. So Larry Fink was the creator of mortgage-backed securities. And then in the early, late 90s, he was one of the first people to adopt ETFs. So this guy's a market maker through and through. Everybody asks why he has so much influence on the world. He's, by most and all accounts, in the Wall Street world, doesn't mean a whole lot in the real world, but one of the most talented people in that field and in that sphere. In 2020, so much so, the United States government called Larry Fink in order to help them think about restructuring their bonds and their bond duration portfolios. So literally, Larry Fink is the king of finance. So when he came out and when he flipped in 2022 to start to kind of change his tone on Bitcoin from an absolute Ponzi scheme all the way into launching the ETF, you knew that it was big. That was your time to buy. And so, honestly, it is what it is. A lot of people get so caught up on whether, it's Michael Saylor now. That's a whole big debate. Like, everybody loves Michael Saylor when he's pumping their bags and the MicroStrategy flywheel is pumping. They issue more convertible bonds or more stock in order to buy more Bitcoin, which pumps their price. Everybody loves Michael Saylor Then he talks about financial products or Bitcoin yield is how they're kind of determining their cash on cash or the return that they get on their Bitcoin. And then, like Alex Leishman and River comes out with a Bitcoin yield product and everybody loves it. Like, long story short, like, Bitcoin is universal for everybody. Now, there are levels to this. There is no second best. So in terms of Bitcoin versus other ETFs, there is no second best. The Bitcoin ETF is the best. Bitcoin ETFs versus real Bitcoin, there is no second best. There is only the right thing, which is buying real Bitcoin. And so I do believe, like everyone says, BlackRock's buying this. BlackRock's buying it in a trust on behalf of their shareholders. Now, is there honeypot risk? Is there concentration risk? Is there a risk that the United States government will not be able to pay their unfunded liabilities or all of their Medicare, their Social Security? We all know that those things aren't true. Is your pot of Bitcoin in an ETF through a government at risk in that scenario? Absolutely. Seizure and confiscation is not realistic. Lynn Alden actually had a Nostr post recently saying that seizure and confiscation in a digital era is not realistic at all. But what is realistic is taxing or confiscating through products and retirement portfolios. Because the only thing that actually gives your financial or retirement portfolio the tax-free advantage is because the government says so. Not because the asset held in a 401k versus a Roth IRA versus you personally is any different. It's no different. It's just what the government tells you about that thing and whether you're going to have to pay taxes on it. So for me, I always say, hold it personally. There's no question about that. But is Wall Street going to get into it? Yes. Are mortgage-backed securities a thing? Yes. Will there be bubbles that get created on top of Bitcoin-backed products? Absolutely. But what does that represent for you? An opportunity to buy. The richest people in America right now are the people who bought real estate in 2009 and 2010. The bubble is what created the opportunity for wealth in real estate, not the other way around. And so people say that this is a bad thing. If you have a long-term view and a long-term perspective, keep buying. Buy the real thing. There is no second best. That's kind of my thoughts on it. It's going to happen. Larry Fink's a market creator. He's the best in the world. No surprise that it's the most successful product of all time. You even hear it in their earnings reports. It's driving the majority of BlackRock's profits in their assets under management. And so not a surprise. Will keep happening. And yeah, glad that we have guys like Michael Saylor, Michael Strategy, Micro Sailor, however you want to say it, on board. Because if we didn't, we'd have guys like Jamie Dimon. So pick your poison.
Let's go. Hold on. Everyone in the chat says Dante's cooking. Let's go. Anyways, we are going to be talking about taxes in the news. We do have a recent development on taxes, so I'm glad you brought that up because that is going to be the news story today. But before we do that, Dante, before I forget, I'm going to give you the floor so we can cook Ethereum a little bit. So I saw this tweet here yesterday from Tomer Strolight, and he goes, Bitcoin is worth $1 trillion more than Ethereum. And you can check CoinMarketCap here because, of course, in that ETF news, that they were kind of bundling the ETH ETF with the Bitcoin ETF. Of course, there's no second best. It's Bitcoin and everything else is a shitcoin. But it is actually kind of crazy that Bitcoin now is worth $1 trillion more than ETH. Whatever happened to the flippening here? I thought ETH was going to take over the world. So Dante, I'm going to give you this moment. You want to cook ETH a little bit, maybe dissuade someone from buying this trash coin known as Ethereum?
That's my sailor side. So look, the last time we've heard from Vitalik was him getting commented through these articles 2 days ago about him making a comment about Michael Saylor saying that, Bitcoin held in institutions is a terrible strategy. That's been your entire strategy from the beginning, was literally to co-opt Ethereum with the guys at JP Morgan and Web3 and MetaMask in order for governments to create their own privatized blockchains. That's literally been your path from the very beginning. So proof of stake, proof of trash, there's no value in here. It's inherently not valuable. All of the people that were riding on the backs of crypto ETFs have been absolutely killed. You haven't heard anything in the media about the ETH ETFs because they're non-existent. They're not worthy to even be talked about. Like there's no second best in all asset classes. ETH is I guess no different than anything else. The world computer, the worldwide compute network that would allow you to earn a yield via staking your assets, the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. And so now it's just kind of coming back out, like it's coming full circle. We only hear about Vitalik when he's talking about Bitcoin these days because no one's talking about Ethereum. Nobody cares. I hope it continues to get buried. The ratio is like 0.3, I don't know, 3.6 or 3.3. I think we'll see below a 0.3 ratio of Bitcoin to ETH in this next bull cycle, and it's not coming back.
Let's go. Well, we don't do it enough here and shit on Ethereum because we are just Bitcoin focused, but absolutely love it. I also can't help but throw an opportunity to spread the signal that it's Bitcoin only. This is why we're simply Bitcoin. This is why everything we tell you is to just buy some Bitcoin, hold it long term, take it into cold storage, run a node. This is how you win, guys. Keep it simple. Do not gamble in the shitcoin casino. And I think, the market's speaking for itself. People do not want to hold Ethereum. Yes, they got their ETH ETF, like you said, because of maybe their connections with Wall Street, and that's probably why they got that approved, even though Gary Gensler for a long time was saying, hey, wait, isn't this a security? But hey, they're going to play some trickery out there and do some favoritism, but that's a whole other story. Let's get into the news story because we do have a very interesting news story today coming out of Denmark, and it is a threat, a theme we've been talking about here on the show for a long time about as Bitcoin starts to completely win and get out of the race, countries are going to start to try to clamp down and do capital controls. And we did talk about that Lynn Alden post the other day, and maybe I should find it real quick and we can talk about it while I cover the news. All right, let's get into it, guys.
special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet designed with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin.
All right, boys and girls, mainly boys, but some girls, make sure you get yourself a Passport by Foundation. It's beautiful. Connect this with the Envoy app, and I swear this is probably the easiest way to secure your Bitcoin. Shout out to the whole team. Open source. It's great. Looks like an old Nokia. I think you can still play Snake on it. Make sure you scan the QR code. This is the way, guys. Use the promo code SIMPLY and protect your Bitcoin the right way. All right, guys. As I was telling you, actually, maybe let me full screen this. Or no, I'll cover it. In there's a note here. So we've been covering this theme on the show for a long time. Remember last week we had the talk from Italy proposing capital gains tax, raising the capital gains tax from, I believe, 26 to 42%. We also saw Kamala this year, or the Biden administration, come out and say that they're proposing a 25% capital gains tax on just Bitcoin itself. And now we're seeing that in Denmark, they are proposing a bill to tax unrealized cryptocurrency capital gains tax next year. So I am over here on No BS Bitcoin. I will jump to the source for a little bit, but just kind of doing the TLDR here. This new bill is expected to be presented to the Danish Parliament in early 2025, with the country's tax law council recommending that the rules should not be implemented before January 1st, 2026 at the earliest. So the Danish Ministry of Taxation recommends taxing unrealized gains and losses on cryptocurrency assets in the same way it taxes stocks and bonds. Recommend they dropped a 93-page report talking about this. So let me go to the source here. I'm on Atlas 21, kind of jumping in, giving it a little more context. So again, headline: Denmark proposal for taxation on unrealized cryptocurrency gains. The Danish tax proposal on unrealized crypto gains. The goal is to implement new regulations by 2026. The Danish Tax Council has recently suggested the introduction of a bill to tax unrealized gains and losses related to, quote, digital assets. And the details of the council reports: in a 93-page report on the tax regime applicable to cryptocurrencies, the council examined 3 potential methodologies for taxing digital assets: a capital gain taxation, a warehouse taxation, and an inventory taxation. And the report proposes a uniform approach to the taxation of digital assets, valid in all contexts. Danish tax minister Rasmus Stoklund emphasized the need for a clearer rules to avoid unfair taxation under the current regime. Sounds like an oxymoron. Unfair taxation, but clearer rules, and you're going to tax unrealized, gains, cap gains on just Bitcoin or digital assets. Interesting. All right, so the preference is for this inventory model. Among the alternatives discussed, the report leans towards the, quote, inventory taxation model. This model stipulates that the entire cryptocurrency wallet is considered a single inventory taxed on an annual basis at a specific date regardless of the sale of the assets. In a similar scenario, digital assets would be treated like other financial instruments such as stocks and bonds, taxing both unrealized gains and losses. And detail regarding the retroactive application of the tax rules for current wallets remains unspecified. Some additional proposals suggest that service providers for digital assets, such as exchanges or cryptocurrency payment companies, should collect and share data on customer transactions. This information could support collaboration amongst European Union countries on tax matters. Of course, the timeline is no earlier than 2025, may be implemented by January 1st of 2026. And I think this is the context that we've been talking about. We've been covering it on the show, the international context. So the Danish proposal fits into a growing international mosaic of tax regulations for cryptocurrencies. In the United States, for example, a 25% tax on unsold assets has been proposed by presidential candidate Kamala Harris. At the same time, Italy is considering an increase in taxes on capital gains for holders of Bitcoin and digital assets, raising it from 26 to 42% by 2025, which is, I think, just more signal to what we've been saying. Remember, of course, Chrissy Lagarde's been going out there for years basically saying that if there is an escape hatch, if there is an escape boat, that we have to stop it. Of course, they want you to stay having fun being poor. They want you to keep you into the system, and they are doing whatever they can to incentivize you with, fear of violence and fines to ensure that you cannot start to prosper, that you can't increase your purchasing power by holding Bitcoin. So I think this is, I wouldn't say the last gasp of a dying fiat system, but you can tell that they're afraid, especially when you kind of link that with the ECB report about, how they can control Bitcoin. We saw the Fed do another report about maybe the best way, if Bitcoin wins, we should tax it. So now I think we've gotten to, obviously, the then they fight you stage, where at first they're like, let's ignore them. Remember, Neil Kashkari just came out and said, oh, Bitcoin is worthless. And then literally in the same week, he's like, well, maybe if it's worthless, we should still tax them. This is how we can control it. So which one is it? Is it worthless, or do you want to tax us? But I think the theme remains the same. That there is, and if you connect this with what's going on in the BRICS summit, there is an active narrative or an active appreciation, an active move towards people escaping fiat currencies. If you are not as well entrenched in economics and traditional financial world and macroeconomics at large, you may not understand what's going on, but it's all remaining the same. People are realizing there's a problem with fiat currencies. People are realizing that maybe I don't want to hold paper debt as my money right now. Maybe there's an alternative. What is that alternative? Obviously, we think it's Bitcoin. And especially when you connect this with what we saw all of this year, 2024, with Operation Choke Point 2.0, you're seeing that the powers that be, the elites, if you will, I don't like using that word, but you're seeing that they are panicking out there, and they want to ensure that the sheep, cattle stay in their system, where they can tax you, where they can shut you off from the system, where they can debank you, where they can stop transactions, and hopefully moving you towards a dystopian CBDC digital currency system. We all know that's the play. We've been covering it all year long, but it is very interesting that countries around the world are ramping up their control mechanisms from capital flight. And this is what we're seeing. And I think we're going to see more of this play out, not only the end of this year, but moving into the future. That as people find the need to wake up and start to save in Bitcoin, the powers that be, those in control, obviously trying to maintain their power, are going to do whatever they can to stop people from moving into Bitcoin. And obviously taxing us out of existence on our unrealized gains is absolutely ludicrous, and definitely a way to ensure that you can't maintain your purchasing power. And Dante, you jump in on this, and then I'm going to pull up the Lynn Alden tweet. So maybe if you want to reference that as well. But what's your thoughts? First of all, what's your initial knee-jerk reaction to this Denmark proposal of taxing unrealized gains on just digital assets, or Bitcoin and crypto?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and caveat my whole thinking on Denmark as what I call the Denmark discount. Like, I'm going to discount anything that's coming out of Denmark because the whole economy is propped up on fraud and stuff that doesn't actually work. So fraud number one, I think they're the largest exporter in the world of wind and turbine energy. which we all know is just so much of a fraud, right? We talk about ESG and how it's going to be sustainable for the environment. And then you drive by like any field on your way up to Chicago and you see about 1 billion dead birds in the middle of the field. And all the concrete that's there, right, is sustainable and ESG positive for you. You can't use it right in the grid directly. Battery storage isn't good enough. But like a lot of their economy is built up on wind and turbine energy. Fraud number one. Fraud number two, Novo Nordisk. It's like their poster child, right? Which we know has been coming out with fraudulent drugs, right? We don't need to go down that whole rabbit hole there. But yeah, that's Denmark. And, you know, the last time they were relevant in a sports perspective, I think they had 2 guys in the Tour de France. I will give them this, that did win. But we don't know the Tour de France is full of cheaters. So if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying in the Tour de France. And then I think they had a guy win the world championship in badminton in like 2020. So overall, I'm applying the Denmark discount to this. But what you saw with Norway is they wanted to impose a wealth tax on the wealthiest people in their country. And what ended up happening, they thought that they would generate like another like 140 million in revenue, but literally $54 billion worth of net worth in revenue left the country. And so they ended up getting tax losses of like $500 million when they thought that they were going to generate revenue. So literally, this never works. It's one of the dumbest policies that you can enact. I do it to my kids, though, all the time. I'm not going to lie. I'm like Denmark daddy, if you want me to put it out there. I be imposing taxes on stuff that they thinking about doing. Like, that's what this is. Like, I'm going to tax this thing that hasn't even happened yet. Like, go outside if you want to without shoes on. I'm already going to put some marbles in the floor just so your feet feel the fire of going outside. And you might think about going outside without putting shoes on instead of dragging this dirt through the house. So I call it the Denmark discount. It's a nothing burger. To me, it's a stupid policy. More wealth is going to leave the country than it's going to come into the country. And all of these wealthy pharmaceutical holders in Novo Nordisk and all of these different industries are just going to put their assets in other countries. They're going to put them in Swiss banks. They're going to put them in Bitcoin or more Bitcoin-friendly jurisdictions because it's an asset class, whether you like it or not, that people want to invest into. And so either you can get with it or you can exclude yourself from the gains that are going to come from it. But either way, you lose if you try to ban it. You just ban yourself from the opportunities that come from it. So Denmark is another example in this case. More wealth is going to leave Denmark than it's going to stay there. And I don't really take them seriously, to be honest.
Yeah, it really does sound like, it's a proposal. And even if they do try to implement it, like not even getting into all the details and the technicalities of this playing out, like it feels like they're going to abandon this. Hopefully there's enough backlash where if people in Denmark are, not just sleepwalking into their own gilded cage and they're like, no, this is not a good idea. Like, what are you saying? And especially when you kind of think about like, these unrealized capital gains tax are being caused because they are debasing the fiat currency. And then there's even like, if this does spread, like unrealized capital gains tax, say on your house or something, they're going to be so incentivized to just start confiscating people's assets because the dollar or any fiat local currency is just getting destroyed right now. So basically everyone is going to have unrealized capital gains taxes on everything they own. I hate using the term slippery slope, but this is one of those things where if you don't understand how the fiat system works, it's like, it makes no sense when you view it from a Bitcoin perspective. But Dante, I am going to bring up Lynn Alden's note here because we did cover it yesterday, but I think it is fitting that we cover it today. So yesterday we covered this in regards to Saylor talking about self-custody, which we cleared up during the show. Of course, this is talking about the 6102 order and gold confiscation. And I think the point here is at the very end that the governments now can governments today track Bitcoin in the 2020s better or worse than gold in 1930s for enforcement purposes? That's the right question. And don't just think of this in confiscation terms. Think of 70% selective taxes and things like that, far more within the current rule of law. That's the sophisticated approach. Don't take it, selectively tax it by a lot. This is probably where we're going, and these are the politics that we're seeing even being, talked about is now, there it has been a lot of talk in Bitcoin circles. We are all paranoid here, and we're wondering like, okay, when is the 6102 coming down from the pipeline? Because we know that they want to ban Bitcoin. We know they don't like Bitcoin, but I think kind of what Dante was saying and what Lynn Alden is saying, and what we're even seeing from Denmark, from Italy, we've seen this rolled out from the Harrison Biden administration, that they aren't actively or outright attacking Bitcoin at this point. They're trying to choke the on and off ramps, of course, choke point 2.0. Now they're kind of just floating these ideas of just, hey, we don't hate Bitcoin, but you need to pay your fair share, and we're going to tax you on just your Bitcoin at whatever X rate. And hey, maybe we tax you on your unrealized gains here, and maybe this is how we control Bitcoin. And you're seeing all of this being flowed out. And obviously, as Bitcoiners, you can argue about the technicalities of how they're even going to do that, and how, do they even have the manpower and the money to go door to door and, figure out where all these boating accidents were, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it is interesting that they are talking about this. So I think very prescient from Lynn Alden being like, this is where the real ball is going, and that's where we should keep our eye on, not so much that they're just going to outright, ban Bitcoin, try to confiscate our Bitcoin. They're probably going to try to tax us out of existence. And, we can talk about that all day long here, but yeah, jump in, Dante.
Well, like Christian Lagarde, ECB president, said this thing about, well, we need to tax Bitcoin holders because, the more that those people that were in at the beginning, the more revenue that the more gains that they have, like we need to tax them their fair share. If you look at this chart of gold, like before 1971, right, we were at like, I don't know, $29 an ounce around, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and then obviously $35 an ounce after 1945, and then we kind of stayed at that level, a little bit more to that level up until Bretton Woods in 1971, and then the chart just goes parabolic, like $100, $200 an ounce, $300 an ounce, in the 80s, you got to $700 an ounce, went to $1,400 an ounce. Anyways, lo and behold, they didn't impose a tax on people who got into gold early, right? There were no special taxes on the people who invested into Amazon early or Microsoft early. If you look at any asset class, there are people who disproportionately gain from getting in earlier. That is one of the fundamental concepts of capitalism. And for the United States, that is inconsistent, because if they were to do that, right, the value of their own treasury holdings that they still have valued at $35 an ounce, they would have to also discount the fact that they got in early by confiscating people's gold and being the number one holder of gold reserves in the world, which we can't confirm because it's opaque market. We don't know if Fort Knox is actually real, all of this data. Anyways, that's like a whole different, topic. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But the point is that this is true of every asset class. So that's going to be wildly inconsistent. I don't see how this sort of legislation passes in a United States context. I can absolutely see this going in Europe and other places, which jurisdictionally is going to drive more value to the United States dollar. And this is what happens with that dollar doom loop. If you've ever heard of the dollar milkshake theory from Brent Johnson, what happens is the value of the United States market increases relative to the other emerging markets faster, which causes them to pull assets out of their own economy to put them into the United States economy, which then creates more of a distortion and more of a location and more dollars flow. And so that's what happens is the dollar continues to strengthen, not because the dollar is strong, it strengthens relative to their weaker currencies. And so this is a story that I will see play out. If they impose these sorts of regulations in the European Union or in other places where they're going to selectively tax Bitcoin, this would never fly in the United States context. Like any rational judge or, just straight thinking person would say, well, then we're going to have to go back and tax every early shareholder in every other asset class that you have out there, including gold as a commodity. So what that's going to cause is more flight and more capital to go to the United States markets, which is what China is facing right now. We're on a little bit of a tangent, but I'm on one, so I just want to keep going. What's happening in China right now, they're trying to bolster their stock market because their economy is absolutely crumbling. The property values, their real estate values continue to go down, right? The consumers in China have low trust in their own economy. And what you're seeing is they're flooding the market with a bazooka of liquidity in order to prop up foreign investment into their stock market. But ultimately, at the end of the day, people don't trust the Chinese stock market. And so Chinese investors, they've put all of their money into United States markets. They put it into Canadian real estate. They put it into United States real estate in the Pacific Northwest. They continue to send their kids to college in the United States because they want to park their assets in the United States. And that drives up the dominance of the dollar. And so this will continue to happen if other jurisdictions continue to do things like this. If they want to tax Bitcoin selectively by imposing a 70% tax, good luck. More money is going to flow into the United States. That's going to create a stronger dollar. And then it's going to create more pressure to pay back those US denominated debts, which is the euro market altogether. Tangent, but hopefully it's valuable for people.
Dante spitting today. Yeah. And speaking even of China, they did I think it was just maybe floated, but the CCP, the Chinese government out there, is basically now at least talking about taxing their citizens on foreign investments. And so like, is that going to also hurt the U.S. real estate? Obviously, they are worried about capital flight, and they're clamping down on capital controls. And so this is the growing trend. And this is why we talk about this on the show all the time as a theme, that the powers that be, the international bankers, the bankers, the politicians, they aren't as stupid as you might think they are. They understand the game as well. And they understand that they have to clamp down on capital, because if capital isn't treated correctly, it's going to flow to where it's treated well. And we're seeing multiple examples of this play out. And of course, Bitcoin is the superior money here. It's the best money here. And it's very easy to just pick up all your wealth in Bitcoin, go where you're treated well. And we're going to start to see this nomadic Bitcoin meme really start to play out if more countries and more governments start to act very unfavorably towards Bitcoin. And we're seeing this happen in traditional finances. So it's only going to put, gasoline on the fire when they really come after Bitcoin. And man, we all know that it's coming down the timeline, and we see this happening in real time here. It's like the train wreck in slow motion here on Simply Bitcoin, because we constantly cover it and people are like, what? Like, that's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. And now it's like 2-3 months down the line. We're like, no, see here's another example of capital control, whether they're trying to tax it, whether they're trying to ban it. We know what the game is. Once you understand how Bitcoin works and you look at the world through a Bitcoin lens, you understand where the next move on the chessboard is going to come from. And we all know it's going to be capital controls. They're obviously trying to do that with Operation Choke Point 2.0. They're doing it in traditional financial worlds. They're floating out all these tax propositions. It's like, it's coming soon enough. Unless Bitcoin just blows through and we get this watershed moment where everyone becomes a Bitcoiner. But that's probably the most hopium we've had on the show today.
Yeah, no, I don't see that happening. But I mean, for those of us that do get in, I mean, you can either deny it or you can get with it. I always keep this book with me, man. I talk about this book more than I probably should. This is The Everything Store with Jeff Bezos by Brad Stone. Literally at the beginning of this book, he worked at a company called D.E. Shaw, which basically created one of the first, like Gmail equivalents and, ad-based browsers and all these sorts of things. He was the best employee at D.E. Shaw. And he goes to his boss one day, they're one of the biggest and highest performing hedge funds out there. He goes to his boss one day and goes, yo, I'm about to leave to sell some books. And the boss is like, what are you talking about? Like, what the hell do you mean you're going to sell books? He's like, yeah, there's this thing called the internet, and it's growing the last 3 years, a compounded annual growth rate of about 1,500% a year. And I think it's going to be a thing. And so, yeah, I'm just going to start out selling books. We'll see what happens from there. Literally 2 months later, dipped out, went to Amazon, famously, turned that door into his desk and, started from there. The whole point of that is he saw a world based upon the compounded annual growth rate of the internet, that this thing is going to be sustainable. And so I'm going to start at the very bottom, building a system that looks completely different than every other commerce and every other store out there. And lo and behold, we get more Amazon packages at our door than anything else these days. And this is in a span of 20 to 25 years. Relative to when they went public in 1997. So you have to understand the compounded annual growth rate from when they went public is like 32% a year. You have to understand when these trends happen, there's no stopping them. There's a great chart this week going out there about Netflix and how their subscriber chart and growth is like taking off, because Netflix was the first people in this whole streaming wars to have this moat. And when you get these first advantage movers in this digital age, these digital monopolies and digital networks are so devastating when you get that first mover advantage and you get that moat first. And Bitcoin has that moat in the crypto world versus ETH, in the ETF world versus other financial products, and the self-sovereignty market versus other things like gold. Like what you're starting to see in this digital world, this is the digital hard asset of the next millennium. And so when you think about that, the trend is obvious. Don't fight the trade. Don't make it too hard. You can't see it, but if you squint out far enough, you'll see that this is following the same curves, the same laws, the same things that we've seen in the past.
Totally, man. Absolutely killing it today, Dante. Everyone, we got one last segment. We're going to be talking about all the stuff that Dante is working on. But of course, there's over 1,700 of you guys watching live. Let's get the likes up on YouTube. It helps us get pushed in the algos. Hashtag for the algos. Let's make sure more people are hearing this message. This is how we win, is waking up everyone out there to the real problems in the world. But before we do that, let's get into the culture. I think if you like Dante spitting on today's show, he's going to drop some more sauce for you guys. All right, guys, of course, we pay the bills here. Make sure you go to orangepoapp.com. If you are hearing what we're saying today, the silver lining here is that one day Bitcoiners will have all the wealth. And so you want to stack some friends who stack sats. So you need to ensure that you take these relationships from the internet and you bring them into Meet Space, because, hey, I don't know if you guys noticed what happened the last 4 years, but things have gone pretty crazy, like really crazy the last 4 years. And it would have been better if we had a small community of like-minded individuals, or rather a huge community of like-minded individuals, so that you can rely on people that you know in Meet Space to fight back against the great Leviathan that we find ourselves in. What a crazy world. Anyways, go to orangepoapp.com, stack friends who stack sats. This is the way. All right. Well, first and foremost, I'm just going to show the YouTube a little bit here, Dante, because if you like what Dante is doing, if you aren't aware, Dante is one of our newest content creators doing the Bitcoin Simply show. So Dante, you've been killing it. Let's just give the people a little TLDR. You know, what do you cover? What do you want to do? What's the mission with the Bitcoin Simply show?
Man, it's in the name. Like, we don't want to overcomplicate it. I want to make Bitcoin simple for people. I mean, honestly, I want to make it fun. I want to make it entertaining. I want to make it relevant. So I'm always trying to mix in a sports reference, a funny joke, a funny clip here that allows everybody to kind of get on the same page with what we're talking about. And so that's my whole goal with the show and creating content again. And with that, you know, one of the biggest observations I had when I was doing the Bitcoin Daily Show at Swan, I put out this thing where I said, hey, send me an email with your questions at daily@swanbitcoin.com. And literally surprised me. Like, I would get like 30 to 40 emails a day of people asking these questions of, how do I navigate this? Will quantum computing destroy Bitcoin? What is a multi-sig versus a single sig? How do I know that the government's not going to ban it? And what you understand is that there's so many people, like Twitter is probably not the best medium to get like Lynn Alden or one of these, you know, experts to reply back to your tweet with this serious question that you have. LinkedIn is clearly not the other right community, where it's like literally like the algos ban anything and everything about Bitcoin. But then it's like your professional context is kind of weird. Like none of your other peers are like really like engaging with Bitcoin there. So I just thought like, hey, what if there was this third space where people could literally learn, engage in community with others about Bitcoin and like get real questions answered? How do they navigate this new frontier? And that's why I came up with this idea of like Columbus. Like, that's what I'm doing with joincolumbus.com. We've been in beta for like the last 2 months. We've got, you know, hundreds of members now, and it's pretty cool to see people really want community. They really want answers. They want to go in depth. They want it to be easy and understandable. And so that's what I want to do with my show. That's the kind of content I'm trying to create. I'm literally like in the process, like somebody tell me not to do this, but like writing a book to help make Bitcoin simple for people. But it's literally all in the vein of helping people to try to understand this new revolutionary technology that I believe will change the world. It's just hard to see that it's not going to do what everyone said that it will. And I want to make that accessible to everybody. Like those adoption curves, like the early adopters, that first 1%, and we're in that kind of second phase of this S curve. You're going to get like everybody else jumping in here. Oh, I think it's my phone. You're going to get everybody else coming in here. That's, your grandfather, your uncle, your cousin, and them. They want to learn about Bitcoin. But when you start talking about Merkle trees, you start talking about lightning nodes, you start talking about Datum and Ocean and all these protocols, you're using all this language. You're like, whoa, that makes no sense to me. Well, you've got to break it down in a way that helps them understand, because everybody's on a journey. Crawl, walk, run. We're moving from, hey, maybe I might consider some in my in an ETF in a retirement portfolio. Hey, let me think about how do I buy some on one of these exchanges. And the first ad that they see is Coinbase. Terrible, I know. But then one of your buddies convinces them to listen to a podcast. They don't get off they move from Coinbase to a Bitcoin only exchange, like the Bitcoin Well, like River, like Swan, one of these Bitcoin only companies that has their best interest in mind. And then they move from leaving it on an exchange to withdrawing it to an online wallet. Maybe that's a Blue Wallet. Maybe that's Phoenix Wallet. Maybe that's one of these other kinds of wallets where they kind of get interested in this sort of thing. And they send their first transaction. And then they realize that the transaction that they sent was too small. And it's going to create a small UTXO where the price of the fee in the future is going to cost more than the sats that it's worth in the UTXO. And so then they go, oh man, maybe I could just buy this Bitcoin, but withdraw it in larger UTXO sets so that it's going to be valuable in the future. And then they move from, oh crap, how do I do that? Well, I've got to download Sparrow Wallet, or I've got to run my own Start9 Lab node, or I've got to, download one of these softwares to help me, or a desktop software to help me understand these transactions and to do these sorts of things. And then they go from single transactions to multi-sig, right? Oh, well, I have to sign twice, like multiple signatures in order to release these funds. And then you go completely off the grid, right? Everybody's on this continuum and on this journey. Like I'm really focused. Like I love all the people on the side, like all the hardcore folks. I'm just not that hardcore. Like I'm watching Thursday Night Football. I'm trying to see what Matt Stafford, does to the Vikings tonight. Like former NFC North guy, he's got to hate those guys. Weird. They might trade him to the Vikings. Sort of a weird turn of events if he was in a Vikings jersey. But like I'm watching the game just like everybody else. Like, and people are looking at these different lines on FanDuel. I don't bet. I just buy Bitcoin. But it's interesting for me to look at that stuff. And then so if I make a funny joke related to the game that allows them to get into Bitcoin, that's a win for me. So that's what I do 3 days a week, hopefully more, moving towards 4 days a week on Bitcoin Simply, on the Simply Bitcoin channel. And then through Columbus throughout the week by trying to help people go deeper in their journey. And then hopefully through a book and other content that should be coming out soon. But that's what I'm up to, man.
Love it, Dante. I mean, I do agree with one thing you said. I don't really watch much sports ball anymore. I have been catching some college football games on the weekend. But one thing that I find very interesting, and you kind of just touched on that, is like, yes, once you kind of get obsessed with Bitcoin, it's like all you think about. But after you kind of get through that initial like technical hurdle and, you understand enough, you go back to, I just want to live a good life, man. And Bitcoin is going to help me live that good life. And hey, I know a lot of Bitcoiners hate on people that like football or watch sports and all that stuff, but it's like, there's other things outside of Bitcoin. And this is how we get people into Bitcoin as not just a money revolution, but like a cultural revolution to understand like, yo, there's a lot more to life than just Bitcoin. But once you get on the Bitcoin standard, once you fix the money, you will fix the world. And so kudos to you and the journey over that, Columbus. But I see you do want to jump in before we'll plug Columbus and wrap up today's show.
I mean, the last thing that, my whole journey with getting people into Bitcoin is so that we can get the things that we truly want in life. Like, so the thing that I always want to say is like, nobody that's watching my, Bitcoin Simply shows are going to be at like my funeral. Like Bitcoin is an avenue for me to connect with the people that I love to spend the most time with. I have 4 kids. I live in community. If you walk around on the east side of Indianapolis, like people know who I am. People know who I am in this city. And so it's like, I want to be famous like in my own city, in my own little pocket in my own city, right? Like I want to be known by the people that know me best. And so that's kind of my end goal. And so Bitcoin is an avenue for me to express that through financially through becoming financially sovereign and financially free. And so my whole thing with Bitcoin is like, Bitcoin is not the end all, right? It's not the destination. It's the journey towards the place where you ultimately want to go. So use it as a tool, use it as a resource to help you achieve the goals and the things that you want in life. And so that's my end goal. Like, I'm out in the real world. Like, I'm out at like games, I'm coaching, I'm on sidelines, I'm doing different stuff. Like, we got to get off the computers. We got to get off the screen. We got to get away from, the algos and all the things that people want to suck us into, so that we can start to get out into the real world. And so if you start to think in these epochs, these four-year cycles, right? Like, you really begin to desensitize yourself to the sways and the pulls of all of this media, all of these hype cycles, all of these election cycles, and you start to think longer term. And that's what Bitcoin ultimately allows you to do, is you get into Bitcoin real deep, and that allows you to exit into the things that you care about more deeply.
Couldn't agree more. All right, let's plug Columbus one more. But there was a good question here, and I'm also wondering this. I know Chris is a part of this. You have a couple Bitcoiners that I know that are part of Columbus. But someone asked, can I join Columbus to teach people about nodes? Like, how does this community work? And then let's plug how people can join Columbus.
Yeah. So Columbus, it's like a digital online community. And so I've been like behind the scenes trying to build all of this sort of stuff out. But there's literally going to be like forums and places where you can talk about and ask questions about multi-sig, about lending options on my Bitcoin. What's the difference between, Debify or Atomic Finance, or which, again, all these things that I don't like recommend to people, or these sorts of things, but people have questions about them and they want real answers. They want real deep dive. So this is going to be a community where you can ask those questions that are hard to ask in public. So it's kind of a forum, sort of like Slack or Telegram or these other things, where you have these different channels that we talk about these different topics. Then we bring in different speakers. So the last two speakers that I've had are Larry Lepard. I've had Gio Santostasi, all right, to talk about the Bitcoin power law. We're bringing in a multi-sig expert. We're actually going to go through live. What is multi-sig? How do you invite different people into contracts? How do you sign these transactions through your signing device, not your hardware wallet, bad term, but teaching people all of these different differences with that. And so there's a couple of different tiers. There's the adventurer tier, which is anyone can join. They can come and they can learn for free. And we're going to have courses. We're going to have all of these things in there. Then there's the explorer tier. So these are people that are going to go a little bit deeper in their journey. We get to have one-on-one calls. Like, it's like $10 a month. Like, people get to actually engage with like me and other Bitcoin experts, like Elaine Mo, someone you've seen on the show, other people that are working behind the scenes that are going to answer your actual questions and not just be out there in the internet. And then you have the adventurer tier. This is a place for like high net worth individuals and other people to connect in like roundtables with other people that share their problems. These are people that own businesses. These are people that have significant net worths. They have trust. They don't know which lawyers to use, which trust advisors to use, which accountants to use. Like, their existing network is counterposition to their desires, which is to go deeper into Bitcoin. And so it's a small community for this group of people to do this as well. But like, that's the practical of it. Like, we're coming up on like 2.5 months, so we're really about to come out with all of these different products and things. But like, it's a digital online community to navigate your Bitcoin journey.
Love it, bro. Killing it. Oops, wrong comment. Everyone's yelling at me because I'm not hanging out in the chat. Hey, guys, I'm producing the show in real time as well. But Dante, you killed it today. I do want to give you actually two questions. First off, tell the people when you drop the Bitcoin Simply show, so they know when to check out for you on the Simply Bitcoin channel. And then I want to do one last question. So do that quick plug. When do people find you on the Bitcoin or Simply Bitcoin channel?
On the Simply Bitcoin channel, the show that I produce is called Bitcoin Simply, and that comes out on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So I definitely want to plug that. The shows typically come out between 3:30 and 5 every single day, or on those certain days. Rustin is on the other days of the show, and we're thinking about even producing a Sunday show. So we're coming out on Tuesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays on Bitcoin Simply.
Love it, bro. Okay, last question. I know you're technically in the co-host seat today, but since you're also kind of being the guest for today, I always leave with the same question. What is the last message you want to leave with the audience? It could be about life. It could be about Bitcoin. It could be one last plug for Columbus. Whatever it is, what's the last 2 sats you want to leave with the audience today?
Wow, I'm going to be back, so I don't need to hit y'all with anything that's like morbid or like, go kiss your loved ones or that sort of stuff. Like, I'm going to leave with this whole comment from like BRICS and Putin and everything that happened today. Like, he said today that the dollar is the most important financial asset in the world. The majority of financial trade is facilitated through the dollar. So he didn't say that the dollar is going to be worth less. It's going to be worth less over time when compared to harder assets. So it isn't going to zero nominally. It's going to zero in the real terms when compared to harder assets. The dollar will go to zero against things like what Paul Tudor Jones and Stanley Druckenmiller and even Larry Fink said, hey, I'm long hard commodities. I'm long Bitcoin. I'm long gold. I'm short treasuries. I'm short the United States government, right? All of these people have said the same thing. And these are some of the best investors of all time. Don't make the trade too hard, right? The dollar is not going to zero. It's becoming worth zero in relation to harder assets.
Yeah, listen. That's called motherfucking
wrong one. I wanted to give some woos. Here we go. All right. Well, Dante, thanks for coming on. Actually, let's do one more. Plug your Twitter, and then of course, guys, go to joincolumbus.com if you're interested in what Dante is doing. But Dante, plug your Twitter real quick, and then let's wrap up today's show.
All right. My Twitter is Dante_Cook1. Trying to get to 10K. I'm kind of a hermit on there. I don't post as much as I should. I don't really like hang out on Twitter. It's hard for me to get out. Like I got like literally 4 kids. It's hard. But still, Dante_Cook1. And if you want to learn more about Columbus, go to joincolumbus.com. We're going to start ramping up that like really soon. Come out of beta, like really get out in the public. People are like, what is this whole Columbus thing? Like you're going to start to see really soon. We're pretty excited about it.
Love it, bro. Love it. Well, me too. I'm trying to get to 10K too, but I never plug my Twitter. I haven't even been active on Twitter, but yeah, since you're plugging, go to Twitter and follow me at Optimus Field. But let's get the self-show in here. Anyways, Dante, really appreciate you coming on the show. Absolutely killed it today. Did an incredible job. But so we're gonna have to bring you more on the live show because the chat is loving it. Maybe it'll be a trifecta with you, myself, and Nico on the live show one day. Thank you for coming in. And on that note, bro, let me pull you behind the scenes and wrap up today's show. All right, boys and girls, mainly boys and some girls. Of course. Like the show, subscribe to our YouTube, comment below what you think of the stuff we're saying, but hey, let's be a little constructive here. I know we're late a little bit, so don't just be saying you guys should start earlier. Be like, all right, maybe I agree or disagree. We are open to constructive criticism here. We love you guys. Have a good day. And piggybacking off something Dante said, go outside, touch some grass, eat some good food, call your loved ones, hang out with your friends and family. The person you are yelling with on Twitter will be there when you get back. Get off the black mirrors, boys and girls. On that note, I'll be back tomorrow, same time as always, of course, Monday through Friday, 12:15 p.m. Eastern time. This has been your boy Opti, and this is the Simply Bitcoin Live. Peace out.
By bitcoinwell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.